The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Join the excitement and sign up to Jeff Banks online now to get 10% off any net losses returned as cash after your first month of betting up to £500 at jeffbanks.bet. Welcome along to the Final Furlong podcast. I'm Emmet Kennedy. It is great to have your company, and as we look forward to the upcoming Henry Cecil Open Weekend on September 21st and 22nd, I'm delighted to say that we are once again joined by a renowned racehorse trainer, hugely successful racehorse trainer, and a man who will be opening his stable to everybody that weekend. Charlie Fellows, welcome back to the show, Charlie.
Hi, Emmett. Nice to be on. Thank you for having me.
Great to have your insight. Great to have your company, as always, on the show. I know you're obviously in the podcast game. I don't think I've ever asked you about this before, but how is the show with George going?
Do you know what? It's actually been awful recently because George has decided over the last couple of years that he can actually train a racehorse, and as a result he's done rather annoyingly well for my liking, which meant that he's back to his usual sort of chipper self. I preferred it when he had a couple of quiet years and I could take him to pieces, but annoyingly he's absolutely flying at the moment, which no one benefits from, really.
How dare he? thinking he can go and have success. How dare he?
I know.
I know you did a show with Richard Hannon at the start of the season, and Jamie Osborne, I think, launched your show. Do you enjoy doing it?
Yeah, it's really fun. I do enjoy doing it. The problem is that we're both very busy. We both have young families, kids. So getting together with the sound engineer and with Tony, who sort of acts as referee. But, it's just not that easy. But we do essentially really enjoy doing it. We prefer having guests on. It's fun. It's fun. And we've done it for years. Like, it's been going for quite a long time now. And it always surprises me the number of people that come up to you at the racecourse and say, "Oh, when's the next pod out?" It has always surprised me because we just kind of did it as a bit of a joke. It wasn't even my idea; it was George's idea. But I never thought as many people listen to it as apparently they do.
It's a mad feeling, isn't it? And it's always a really good feeling too. I think that racing fans and people in general they want a bit of authenticity. And you're not really getting that in broadcasting anymore. And to be fair, I understand why. Like the jokes that would have gone on Channel 4 Racing back in the day, for example, like we can all, even the people who were uploading older broadcasts of Channel 4 Racing, you can watch that and reminisce about, oh my God, like that was, what's happened to racing broadcast? That's all. Yeah. You can't do that with Ofcom anymore. Those kind of off the cuff remarks, there's no way ITV are going to risk that. So whereas in the podcast game, well, we're a little bit freer to say what we want within reason, obviously.
Regulated.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
you can be that little bit more liberated, a little bit more free with what it is you really want to say.
Yeah,
but
very much so.
I would be very interested to have both of you on for a crossover show at some point. So if we can make that happen over the summer,
we'd love to. Very much so. I'd love to do that.
All right, well, let's make that happen. But by the way, I'm pretty sure as I was doing the TalkSport coverage of Royal Ascot, I'm pretty certain I did see you throwing your hand into the air with delight after Isle of Jura absolutely bolted up in the Hardwick Stakes. Was that a celebration of I'm delighted for my friend, or just I better make it look like I'm delighted for my friend, that bastard?
No, that was someone who looked very like me, but definitely wasn't me. I was crying in a corner somewhere.
It is a fantastic transformation, though, for Isle of Jura, and obviously a horse who's going places very, very fast. I presume he will be one of the horses who will be on show at the Henry Cecil Open Weekend. It's gone from the Open Day to Open Weekend, and there are more trainers who are going to be involved in it this year. Not only yourself, but John and Thady Gosden will be opening their doors for the first time for the Henry Cecil Open Weekend as well. So what can we expect in September?
Yeah, look, I feel like we've turned a corner. Now, I might be a bit premature with that, but, it's always... I took over as chairman of the Open Weekend about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was always a real hassle getting trainers to open their yards, and you'd get the same trainers every year opening, and then the big guys, and it was just a pain. And we made a couple of tweaks over the winter. Firstly, I decided that we'd split the town up rather than asking every single yard to open every year. We'd split the town up into half and ask one half to open one year and one half to open the next year. And I approached the trainers at the Trainers Federation meeting, and they were on board, but they wanted the beneficiaries of the open weekend to change. Obviously, all the money is raised for charity, and so far we raised roughly 50 to 60 grand every year.
Wow.
In my opinion, that's nowhere near as much as it should be raising.
Okay.
I think it punches well below its weight, especially when you consider that Lambourne Open Weekend makes over 100. So I wanted to see how we could get everyone on board. And there is a new project that is being set up in Newmarket called the Newmarket Housing Trust. And the idea is to build a sort of university hostel type sort of halls of residence over at the racing school. And there'll be about 25, room for about 25 kids. And it'll be restricted solely to people aged between 16 and 18. And basically, it's a sort of halfway house. So once they either leave the racing school or they come into the industry on their own accord, rather than living in Newmarket and having to rent their own place and, being dumped from being at home with your family to what can be quite an intimidating town at times with its pubs and its nightlife and its, many sort of temptations. This was a way to hopefully provide young kids with somewhere safe to live when they start working in the industry, and food will be provided. There'll be a bus to get them to work, and there'll be a sort of warden type person to look after them and act as a mentor and stuff like that. And I think for the racing industry, it's a really good starting point for kids coming into the industry. And as everyone knows, there is a staff shortage at the moment. So we need as many people coming in and starting to work in the industry as possible. Once that's built, we'll then start to try and buy houses around town for families and young people and to go into. So it's a real project, but the trainers were all massively on board. And as a result, nearly, I'd say 90% of trainers have said yes to opening their doors either this year or next year. And as you said, John and Thady are going to headline the Open Weekend this year. William Haggis will be the big trainer next year. Neither have ever opened their yards, so it'll be a sort of a chance of a lifetime to go and see them. And I mean, you name it, the trainers pretty much opening, but pretty much everyone has said yes. There are a couple that have said no, but pretty much everyone's on board. So that's huge, and I'm hoping as a result, the real good feeling and positivity around the Open Weekend will help us sell more tickets, get more people here, and that will all help us raise more money for charity.
It is quite unique that Newmarket is this hub of its racing's HQ, and there's so many trainers there all together. But for the whole place to, most of 90% of the whole place to be opening up their yards for that weekend. I mean, obviously, on race days, you're going to be busy. On Classic Weekend, 2,000 and 1,000 Guineas days, Newmarket is going to be a hive of activity. But it must be pretty electric when every stable is opening their doors to racing fans to be able to come in and get to see behind the scenes.
Yeah. I mean, this hopefully this will be unprecedented. And, as I say, the frustrating bit is that Lambourne have been doing this for years. And the Lambourne Open Weekend, admittedly, a much smaller racing centre, and so far fewer people to open. But at the end of the day, the whole town has always got behind the Lambourne Open Weekend, and it's been something that racing could be really proud of. And I'm hopeful that this is the beginning of the Henry Cecil Open Weekend joining, that sort of, position in racing, and that position as a sense of pride and something that we can just really showcase this sport. Really show people behind the scenes, show them what we're doing, show them how beautifully these horses are looked after, how amazing the yards around Newmarket are, how historic they are, all at the same time as raising hopefully a shed load of money for charity.
What can those who are making their way to Newmarket on September 21st and September 22nd, what can they expect when they arrive at Charlie Fellow's yard?
At my yard, well, we'll see. There might be. Normally, we have a little cake stand. We've got teas and coffees. Lots of very smiling faces around the yard, welcoming people in. We're pretty relaxed. We want people to get up close and personal with the horses and really see what we're about. So yeah, we'll be open as always, and hopefully I would have had about 10 Group 1 winners by the end of the year, so they can go and pat all of those. But yeah, there's so much going on. There'll be racing on the Saturday. There'll be vets practices open. The racing museum will have stuff going on there. The racing school opens its doors. You name it, they're pretty much all open. So it's a real chance to look behind the scenes at every aspect. You can go to Tattersalls, to the sales where there's talks. There's just so much going on. It is a fantastic weekend. And, it's, as I say, a 2-day event. So come stay the night and get really stuck in on the Sunday where, as I said, there'll be a lot of fantastic yards opening, a lot of yards that haven't opened for a long time. Sir Mark Prescott opening again. He's only opened twice in the last 20 years. John and Thady, obviously, we've spoken about. Michael Bell, Derby and Oaks winning trainer, will be opening his yard, I think, this year. There's loads.
Yeah, Alice Haynes, Amy Murphy, Ben Brookhouse, Charlie Fellows, some bloke called Charlie Fellows, Dylan Cunningham, Ed Dunlop, George Margison, George Scott, some bloke called George Scott, Harry Eustace, Jack Jones, James Ferguson, James Morton. There's a full list of everybody who's involved. Jonathan Thady Gosden, the body team as well at the Henry Cecil Open Weekend.co.uk. Going racing is an incredible experience, and there's nothing quite like it. It doesn't really matter what kind of a race day it is, but if you're on a Group 1 day at a really great track, like going to York or Ascot, there's nothing that really compares to that. I much prefer going racing to going to a football match, unless it's Liverpool winning an epic 5-3 against Man United or something along those lines, in which case then we might have a slightly different conversation. But getting to actually be at a trainer's yard and getting to be behind the scenes, it's a very, very special experience. Because you know all of the work that has gone in before, but your brain sort of is trying to imagine, well, I wonder what it's like at a stable, and to actually be there and see those horses up close and see the work that is done and the facilities that you have, and just to be out in the, quite honestly, to be out in the country air and breathing in the much healthier atmosphere. It's an incredible sight. You can understand why there's so much research about the mental health benefits of being around racehorses and what it can do for people who have depression or anxiety, and how it can calm people. You can obviously see, I'm sure not every day is sunshine, rainbows and lollipops, Charlie, but there are definitely major advantages to being able to be there and to just get behind the scenes to see what it's like to be working with horses day in, day out. It's magic.
Yeah. And I think, I think there's a perception that horse racing is something it's not, and I think Newmarket is definitely some of the yards here, the history. My yard, the yard that I train out of, was built in the 1800s. We've had several Derby winners out of it, although none trained by Charlie Fellows yet.
Emphasis on yet.
Yeah, but it's it's a very, very special industry that I think often is thought of as something it's not. And the Open Weekend is a really, really good way for people to come and see and actually see quite how different it is, and how how sort of passionate and caring it is about the horses and the animals that we work with every day.
We've just had Royal Ascot, and it was widely regarded as one of the best we've had. It was being described as the best racing festival, without a question. I think if you were to ask that question before the pandemic, people would have said, obviously Cheltenham. What are you talking about? Cheltenham's clearly the best. And now all of a sudden it's flipped to the much posher and much more prestigious Royal Ascot. But I almost feel that there's this desperation in racing to try and make everything that now, or to try and figure out, well, what can we do to learn from Ascot? And I think if there are things that you can learn from the Ascot marketing team, or learn from Ascot as a racecourse itself and how it lays on that meeting, that's great. But there is also it is once a year, same as Cheltenham, and that's what makes it special, is that you're building up for an entire year to it. Ascot doesn't have quite the level of intense scrutiny on it, and the entire season, for example, doesn't build all around Royal Ascot. But are there lessons that you think that can be learned from Ascot's success, and cautionary lessons that could be learned from Cheltenham's decline, that could be taken forward by everybody in the industry as to how to do things properly?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I very much hope that Cheltenham's struggles this year was a flash in the pan, and that they'll be back bigger, better, and stronger next year. Yeah. It is, as everyone knows, Cheltenham is a very, very special place. I actually didn't manage to get there this year, but normally I try and go for one day, and it is absolutely fantastic. I worry that maybe Cheltenham's struggles this year were more reflective of the jumps racing industry as a whole, rather than Cheltenham in isolation, and maybe the fact that Ascot was deemed such a success just shows you that, again, kind of highlights that jumps racing is possibly not in the best position it could be at the moment. And I think with increased scrutiny on animal welfare and that sort of thing, alongside the continued sort of increase in monopolisation of a lot of the races at Cheltenham by some sort of bigger yards in particular, thinking, Willie and Gordon, and there's just, I think jumps racing's not it's not something it's doing to itself, but it's just, it really needs to, the beauty of jumps racing and Cheltenham used to be the stories, and they're just, maybe that's what's lacking at the moment. That's because Willie is dominating so much, or the bigger trainers are dominating so much. Those romantic stories are not coming through quite so much, which is what jumps racing used to be all about, and what Cheltenham used to be all about. And we need more of that. And I think, amazingly, on the flat, it was a lot more varied. There were a lot more people having success, and just more competition, and a greater sort of success being shared out. Whereas at Cheltenham, it's getting harder and harder for the smaller trainer by the looks of it, and that's not a good thing.
No, it's not. And I don't think you can look at the first 2 days at Cheltenham, which are completely dominated by Willie Mullins particularly, but also Irish trainers, and then the narrative somehow switches because Dan Skelton and Paul Nicholls and Jeremy Scott have a couple of winners. It doesn't, like that. That's, you're putting a Band-Aid over a gaping wound. Like, great, they had success, that's terrific. But once again, the very next day, the big race goes to Galopin des Champs. It's another Willie Mullins success, and that's brilliant. I have great admiration for Willie. But what I find really interesting about this is that jumps racing is very clearly being dominated by Ireland, which, considering the size of my country compared to Great Britain, just shouldn't be the case. And yet flat racing is being completely dominated by Britain, with the exception of one man, Aidan O'Brien. And if it's not for if Ireland didn't have Aidan, oof, we would be being crushed completely, and that's not healthy. It's not like it's. My point here is that it's very easy to look at Ireland's success in jumps racing and say, "Oh, everything's great there," and it's not. There's some real problems, and you step outside of that core group of 5 trainers in jumps racing in Ireland. It must be a terrible struggle for the others. It can't not be.
I can only imagine.
So I don't know how that gets fixed. I'm not smart enough to be able to come up with the answers, but I do think it needs to be highlighted. From your own perspective, any dreams of the Breeders' Cup this year or international challenges? Or are they on the horizon for you?
I'd say at this stage, unlikely. My crop of 3-year-olds look distinctly below average. We've had a really frustrating year with them. I think that a few of the nicest ones have picked up injuries, which has really hurt us. I had a very nice filly called Sweet Carolina who won first time out. She's picked up an injury since then, will be out for most of the season. Oof. Lovely horse called Morowig of Sheikh Ahmed's who won at Yarmouth first time up this year. He picked up an injury in the race, will be out for most of the season. And just a few stories like that. And and there hasn't been much depth. What I'm looking forward to looks like my 2-year-olds are okay. My 2-year-olds look pretty good. I had a lovely Frankel colt called Luther win first time.
Yeah, he looked good.
He's interesting. He could be interesting. He's his work had been good before the race. It didn't come as a massive surprise, although mine don't win first time out very often. But he's by Frankel. He's out of a mare called Give and Take, who won the Musidora and was 5th in the Oaks. So technically, he's going to stay 10 furlongs, should do without any problems. I probably haven't had a horse that's bred to stay like he is, do what he's doing right now. So that's quite exciting. He's not the biggest in the world, but his mum was very small. His mum, Give and Take, was very small, but was tough as anything. So, I'm hoping that he's all right. And I think there's some other nice ones there as well. Our 2-year-olds have run pretty well this year. Most of them have placed or hit the woodwork and look like they're winners waiting to happen. So I'm hoping that they are going to give us a big second half of the season.
I'm going to ask you about a couple of them if you don't mind, but just out of interest with Luther, what is your overall plan with them?
Well, I don't know. I can't. I know the race I want to run in, but if you look at the race last year, I think it was the hottest 2-year-old race pretty much run all year.
Oh, the Ascot race?
The Ascot race, the Passedry, This is exactly where I want to run him. Like stiff 7 furlongs. They went steady the other day at Salisbury and turned it into a bit of a sprint, and I think he won despite that. I think a stiff 7 at Ascot will suit him down to the ground. But you look at the race last year, it was an absolute stonker of a race. Rosalien won it by 4 lengths, but the whole field were good. I think Sunway was in it.
Ancient Wisdom or Arabian Crown, one of those two.
Yeah, Ancient Wisdom. There was another one in there that was very good. But yeah, it was a proper race. Al Yanabi, that was in there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yes, possibly there. I could go in a novice again, and run in a novice. I haven't quite decided. We'll see. But he's come through his race good and looks fantastic. I'm pretty excited about him. He could be all right.
I think you should be excited about him if you can get him to do a little bit more work at the stalls, so he's not quite as slowly away. Dearie me, how far would he have won by if he'd broken well?
I know.
Yeah, he's a very exciting horse.
Aziz. Nice horse. He's my Memas. And I found that a lot of the Memasses that I've trained are horizontal. laid back as anything. Great minds, but just very laid back. And he sort of had always worked well at home, but had never gone and won a gallop by 10 lengths, and you'd been like, wow, good horse. But we thought a lot of him before I ran him at Newbury. It's the race that I ran Marban in first time out. So it's a race that's always slightly on my radar for a nice one. And went there, ran a cracker, very eye-catching, having got absolutely no run. Possibly would have gone very close if he'd had a clear run. And so the plan then was to go and win a little race and go to the Coventry. And I thought I'd found this lovely little race up at Ayr, only to be told before the race that Archie Watson's unraced Loughnane Rocket was in fact a rocket. And we duly got beaten by that, although we didn't have the best of runs through. I'm not remotely saying we would have won, but we had to switch round horses and it just didn't quite work out smoothly, whereas Archie's horse got the rail and had it all very straightforward. Archie's Electrolyte then got beaten the nose in the Coventry, so the form looks pretty strong. He's a nice horse, and actually his work recently has been good. He's sort of slightly going through the motions, but he's done a couple of nice pieces of work through the last week. Charlie Appleby's gone and put something very well bred in there, which is really irritating.
Thanks, Charlie.
So I'm kind of hoping that that's not a superstar. But yeah, he'll go very well. And they've had a bit of rain, which is a good thing. So I like him. Nice horse. And I'm hoping he win that, and then we can go to something a bit nicer.
Okay. You've got a Calyx that was interesting me as I was going down through the list of horses earlier on today. Where is it? Where has it gone?
Outlandish.
Thank you. Yeah, it had just gone off my screen. But yes, Outlandish, unraced.
And annoyingly, yeah, quite a nice horse. Actually, a very nice horse. Was working through the spring, and about 6 weeks ago, he picked up a proper injury. So he is currently walking, which is annoying because I own a bit of him. But yes, very nice horse. Had been going nicely. Was bought at Tatts Island, if I remember correctly. And yeah, quite like him. But yeah, he will not be out. I'd say we'll be lucky to see him this year. We'll see.
Okay, that's a shame. When that happens, you just have to give them the proper medical treatment, but also annoyingly, you have to give them the time off.
Yeah, he's a baby, and there was nothing we could do to help him. Like, there's nothing, he doesn't need an operation or anything like that. It was just purely a case of him needing time. So he had a month's box rest, and he's literally just started doing some easy walking.
Okay. Bent Basha, a Sioux Nation out of Annabana Blue.
Yeah, nice big horse. Although he's by Sioux Nation, it's a lot of stamina on mum's side, all stamina on mum's side. And this fella looks the same. He's ready to run. He's ready to go. I don't want him to get run off his feet over 7 on quicker ground. I want him, if I'm going to run him over 7 and he wants further than that, then I want a bit of cut in the ground and a stiffer track. There's a race at Doncaster, a Band B race at Doncaster in about 2 weeks' time, which is absolutely perfect, providing the ground's not quick. So I'm hoping he'll start there because a nice sort of stiffish track should suit him. But he's a nice horse, but he'll stay a mile and a half next year with his eyes closed, and the fact that he's ready to run now can only be a positive.
Okay, he's definitely in the tracker. From Coolmore to Darley, the Blue Point Redif.
Yeah, again, a nice horse. I loved him at the sales and begged Federico, who bought him for Sheikh Ahmed, to send him to me, and luckily he came my way. He just had a bit of juvenile tendinitis through the spring, so I had to back off him a little bit, but he's been doing 2 cances up Warren Hill now for a month or so and is ready to start doing some quicker work. So all being well, I'd hope we'll see him probably early August, I'd say, but maybe late July, but I'd say early August. He's big, strong, sprinting type, looks quick. Would love to have had him out before now, but just wasn't quite ready. But I think he looks like a nice horse at this stage anyway.
There's a whole host of other horses here that I could talk to you about all day, and I would happily talk to you all day. But I want to get yourself and George on the show, and I don't want to take up too much of your time here. Like, oh my God, is this show ever going to end? So is there a 2-year-old that we should be really keeping a very, very close eye out for very, very soon, or just a horse that you're particularly excited about unleashing later in the season?
Okay, so oh God, there's a yeah. I just pray. I hope his owner doesn't hear this. I'm praying that the owner of the horse I'm about to say is not a listener of yours, because they will get ridiculously excited if they hear me giving this as a horse to follow. I've got quite a nice filly by Sioux Nation called She's Perfect, who we bought pretty cheaply at the Breeze Up sales over in Arcana. I went over there, and it was a funny sale. The poor vendors got hammered like it was a bloodbath. And there was a Sioux Nation filly over there that I really liked. And I thought she'd make north of 100, and I didn't even put her on a list. And I drove home, left sort of instructions back at the sale ground, but I never even thought about it because I just thought she was going to make too much for what we were looking for. And she didn't sell. Sure enough, she didn't sell. And we bought her privately. She's done a couple of pieces of work, and she's just looks all right at this stage. And she should be running. There's a race at Newmarket in about what would it be, about 10 days time? No, a bit longer than that. It's on the 19th, I think. And she might start there, but her work has been not bad now, and she's a nice athletic type. She could be okay.
Okay, what's her name?
She's called She's Perfect.
She's Perfect. All right, she's not coming up on the Racing Post database for me. Damn you, Tom Kerr. But obviously there's
no, because she won't have had an entry or anything, so no, she wouldn't. She wouldn't come up yet.
Okay.
So no, that would be why.
Just out of interest, the breeze ups are obviously a relatively new enough thing that people are still adjusting to. And I was talking to someone the other day who was saying, like, these breeze up horses are all nice and that, but are they going to give you a horse that can go and win a classic? And then I started pointing to some horses who have come from the breeze ups that have gone on to win Group 1s. Is it, when you're getting a horse that you think should be costing an awful lot more to the point that you're not even putting that horse in the short list, and then that horse is going for a drastically lower price than you thought, and you swoop in to take advantage, are people still trying to get their heads around how to fully work the breeze ups, and are some people a little bit skeptical of them, or are some people almost becoming a little bit too reliant on them? It's just, oh great, that horse has moved fast, I'll buy that. Like it's not a perfect science.
I think the breeze ups is I struggle to get my head around, because a lot of the time you got to do a little bit of a repair job when they get to you. They come in, their heads maybe are slightly more on the fragile side because a lot of them have been asked to do things that they're not quite ready to do physically or mentally, and as a result, you spend a lot of time just trying to get them to settle down and realize that their racing career going forward will be over a mile, not 2 furlongs. But it was a really strange market this year. Like I went over to Arcana, which I haven't done before, but we had a couple of orders, and I thought there were some lovely horses over there that made absolute peanuts, and it was real feast or famine on a scale that I haven't seen before, especially at that sale in particular. I don't know why. And it's hard. Like, if your horse doesn't do a time, you're done. And the best horse I have ever trained, the most talented horse I have ever trained, who sadly left my care too early because he got sold, was a horse called Cassiopeia. and he was a showcasing colt that I bought for 40 grand at the breeze. That's 40 grand. I think it was 40 or 50. And he did the slowest time of the whole sale.
Whoa.
And but he was a big green baby. He just fluffed his lines, but he was a very good looking horse with a lovely long stride. And we were stood sort of past the winning line when he breezed. And me and Will Douglas, who we buy the horses together, both looked at each other and said that horse was trapping, and he didn't do a time. But he was just, we went and had a look at him, and he was a gorgeous horse. And we took a punt and bought him. And he turned out, admittedly, didn't happen as quickly as I thought it would. I thought he hosed up first time out. His work, now I look back on it, and this was my second year training. I wish I had him now, because if I had him now, I would never have let the owner sell him, because I would have known now quite how good he was. And in 11 years of training racehorses, I haven't seen a horse do what that horse did at home. But it took him 3 starts to do it on the racetrack, and he won his third start by 9 lengths. He beat a horse of Alan King's that actually went on to win at Royal Ascot. And he was a machine, but he didn't do a time. He was at the breezes. He just fluffed his lines, and a bit like his first couple of runs, he was just big and babyish, and he did the same thing in his breeze. So if you look outside the box, and if you do your research and look for ones that maybe aren't meant to do the good time, you can potentially find a bargain. We've done it before. It's not easy. Hopefully a couple of the ones that we bought at the breeze ups this year will be all right. But we never go there with big money. For us, we're always, for me at the breeze ups, it's always sort of slightly tinkering and just trying to find one that maybe has not made as much as it should have done.
Well, a different sale, obviously, but we talked to Ed Bethel the other day, and I mean, it's just extraordinary that you could buy a horse for $3.5 grand that then goes on to be not only a Group 1 winner, but a consistent Group 1 performer. It's bonkers. Regional, and best of luck to him in the July Cup. It's a fascinating story. But was that the Arcana Breeze Up sale this year where Godolphin?
Yeah.
So my memory of that is Godolphin spent over €2 million on a horse, and Coolmore spent a lot of money there. But yeah. I'm pretty certain the Bloodstock report I read in the Racing Post and some of the stuff on Twitter afterwards was, or X, I should say, sorry, Elon, was just what you said, feast or famine, that it was either horses were going for epic amounts of money or they were being withdrawn because they were not meeting their basic reserve, or they were going for a pittance.
Yeah. Yeah, and the problem is that for the breeze up guys, it's kind of last chance saloon. So you've got or for the breeders, it's their last chance to sell a horse. So it's either sell it and get whatever you possibly can for it, or you have to then put it into training and all the costs that come with that, as well as the fact that you haven't sold your horse. So a lot of the guys, by the time you get to Arcana and by the time you get to Goresbridge, they're just like, I mean, it's got to go. We've got to take whatever we can for it. So they've kicked the can as far down the road as they possibly can. They might have tried to sell it as a foal. They might have tried to sell it as a yearling. They might have tried to sell it, at another breeze up sale, or all of the above. And eventually you get to a point where you've got no other out, and it's either put it into training yourself and take all the costs that come with that, or you take the hit and go again next year and hope that you get a bit luckier. But this year in particular at the breeze ups, it felt hard. It felt, and I don't often feel sorry for vendors, but on this occasion, I really did, because it felt like there were a lot of very nice horses not making anywhere near their value.
So the sign of a thriving sport is how the Bloodstock sale is going. If footballers are being sold for hundreds of millions of pounds, then it's a fairly good indication that Premier League football and European football are doing particularly well. But if footballers are being sold for a fraction of their value in another market, then that particular domestic league isn't working for some reason. If that's happening overall in European racing, does that make you a little bit more concerned, or do you think this is just a blip?
It did feel, I've got to say, it felt an isolated, it felt a sort of perfect storm. It didn't feel like the general trend. And I think that's backed up by the results from the yearling sales, foal sales, mare sales. The results generally have been pretty strong recently. So I do think it was a one-off. I think, it was just particularly whether there was just a lack of, I don't know what it was. I don't know what made it happen, but it felt like an isolated. I might be wrong. We might get to the yearling sales, which are worryingly close already.
Yeah.
And it might be more of the same, but I'd have a large bet that it won't be.
Okay. I'm going to choose to end this on the optimistic note. It's all fine. It's all great. And we should be excited. Yeah. But one thing we can be excited about is the Henry Cecil Open Day. You can find out more information. There will be a link on the description of this podcast episode, for that matter. Also on the Jockey Club website. Henry Cecil Open Weekend. If you Google it, it's on Saturday the 21st and Sunday the 22nd of September. The great and the good of Newmarket, including the legend Charlie Fellows, who's been so kind with his time this afternoon on the show. You can get to go and see the stars behind the scenes. Think of it this way. As a Liverpool fan, I would love to be able to go and see the team train. That's just not an option for us. And it astounds me that our sport doesn't market this a little bit more. Like, you can be at the racecourse and meet Charlie Fellows and meet John and Thady Gostin and meet the jockeys. Oisin Murphy will pose for a photograph with you and sign an autograph. You can't really do that at a Premier League game. Just, they're getting more and more disconnected from us. And yet, the stars of our sport you can meet up close and personal, and obviously the biggest stars are the horses. Sorry, Charlie. But you get to see them too. So I think it's brilliant. I think it's an incredible initiative, and the fact that it's all for charity it's really a really wonderful thing that you're doing. Check out the Jockey Club website or the Henry Cecil Open Weekend website, Saturday and Sunday, 21st and 22nd of September. Be there. Charlie, very best of luck to you, and please God, we'll talk to you again very, very soon on the show.
Thanks so much, Emmett. Thanks for having me on.
This episode of the Final Furlong podcast is only possible with your support, listening and watching, and with the support of our sponsors. So give me 60 seconds to tell you about Jeff Banks Bet. Betting on horse racing used to be very simple. It was us, the punter, versus them, the bookmakers, the old enemy. But today, betting with online bookmakers is zero fun. Online betting companies promise you the world, but if you have the nerve and the audacity to place a winning bet, they will make you jump through endless hoops just to access your cash. It is not fair and it's not fun. And betting is supposed to be fun. Jeff Banks is different. He's one of the most recognizable faces in British racing. He's got pitches at racecourses all across the United Kingdom. He is a true horse racing fan. And while Jeff very much promotes responsible betting, he is standing up and fighting back against these insane affordability checks. Affordability checks that will destroy the levy and kill British racing. Sign up to jeffbanks.bet right now. Use our promo code FFP500, and not only will you get access to a bookmaker who values your custom, who is a racing fan, but he'll give you best odds guaranteed on British and Irish racing, and he'll give you 10% cash back on net losses after your first month, up to £500. Gamble responsibly, 18 plus only, begambleaware.org. It's tradition refined with modern tech and unbeatable odds. Use our promo code FFP500 and place your bets now with Jeff Banks Bet. This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp Therapy Online. Have you ever found yourself comparing your life to others? With social media, it's so easy to look at someone's Instagram and think, wow, they've got it all together. But let's be real. Everyone has their struggles, and often what you see online is just a highlight reel. One thing I've learned is that comparison can really steal our joy. Instead of focusing on what others have, therapy can help you center on what you want and how to achieve it. It's all about becoming the best version of yourself. Now, whether or not you've been in therapy, it's important to know that it's not just for those who've gone through major trauma. Therapy can teach you positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, and empower you in your day-to-day life. If you're considering starting therapy, why not give BetterHelp a try? It's entirely online, making it convenient and flexible, to fit into your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a registered therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time at no additional charge. With almost 5,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp provides access to mental health professionals with a wide range of expertise. Stop comparing and start focusing on what truly matters with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/furlong today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/furlong. This has been a paid advertisement from BetterHelp Therapy Online. And the big name guests keep on coming right here on the Final Furlong podcast. This trainer has set a new personal record with 24 winners in the month of June, surpassing his previous best of 23. In that, he earned over £450,000 in prize money in June, and one of his winners was at Royal Ascot. Welcome to the show, classic winning trainer George Boughey.
Hey, good to be on. How are you?
I'm good. Not quite as good as yourself, though. You just seem to be on fire. Everything you touch turns to gold. The level of success has obviously been phenomenal. What does it mean to you and your team to get that many wins in a single month?
Yeah, look, it's been it's a lot of hard work, I think, to get back to where we wanted to be. Like, we had a bit of a difficult spring, and the horses weren't firing how we hoped they would. And it's not something I really set out to do, but I was made aware of it at the end of the month, and a huge credit to everyone at home who's grafting away, and the results are speaking for themselves on the track.
So it wasn't necessarily a plan, we're going to craft out this idea to get 24 winners in a single month. But I did notice you were talking about a decision to focus on higher prize money races this season. What is your thinking behind that?
Yeah, look, I think it's something that we want to try and race for the best prize money that we can. And I think a prime example was Lady Bamford's filly, who ran the other day, who, ran in a 40 grand novice at Pontefract when possibly could have run in a lower grade of race. And it's a hard business to make it work. And we're just trying to run where we think the best prize money is. And once the horses are winners.
Yeah, I've asked a number of trainers this, including two very famous trainers during the week, Ed Bethell and Charlie Fellows, just how difficult is it to be a trainer in the UK? And the question I want to be asking is, like, how great is it to be a trainer? But I'm under no illusions about this, and we've talked about it for years on TalkSport 2. It clearly is very, very difficult. The prize money situation is embarrassingly bad, and that just makes things more difficult for you and for your owners. But how brutal is it?
I think you just kind of have to adapt to what we have, the cards that we're dealt at the moment. And we've been lucky in the UK. We've earned the thick end of 2 million each year for the last 2 years, and quite a lot more money abroad. And it's hard. I think the biggest thing is that, I've got some great guys who own horses with me, and they have to sell one a year to try and make it pay. And these are the horses that they dream of racing. And, a prime example is Pentle Bay, who the owners, they don't have to sell, but they like to make it work. And, he was a €55,000 purchase 4 weeks before we sold him for 400,000 at the Goff sale. And then he was second at Royal Ascot. They'd love to be stood there in the second winner's stall with their horse finishing second. But that generates more trade for me to be able to go and buy more horses for them.
If it was 10 years ago when they had a horse like Pentle Bay, would they have been willing to sell back then? Or would they have been more willing to keep the horse? Has it come to the point that that's just the business model now? As you buy a racehorse, whether it's the breeze-ups or the sales, you're already thinking of, after this horse has raced 2 or 3 times, we're going to have to sell.
I think, look, a lot of my horses are trained with the resale market in mind. It is very hard to do. The vetting process to get to Hong Kong and Australia and that sort of thing is getting harder. But we're always looking for the end goal. I don't keep our horses that long. Once they're exposed, we like to try and find a new home for them, and selling those horses on the up is the way to try and make a few quid along the way.
Yeah, Hughie Morrison spoke to me about this in depth over a year ago on the Final Furlong podcast, and he was saying that the 3-year-old handicap system is just completely flawed in the UK. Basically, the only way that you can run a horse in a 3-year-old handicap, this was his words, not mine, is you have to run your horse wrong, essentially. Because if you win it, then you're screwed for the rest of the season. There's no real hope of that horse winning unless they're a Group 1 horse, and highly unlikely you're running in a handicap if you're that level.
I think the higher end is difficult. You know, I was talking to Harry Charlton the other day with his horse Hand of God, who's, you know, was an impressive winner at Royal Ascot, and then the next step is hard for them. We had Mr. Cut, who did a similar thing in the same race at Royal Ascot 2 years ago, and it's difficult, and it does lend itself well to those horses being sold because it's hard to where to go next. You know, we ended up running in a handicap and then straight into a Group 2, and it's not the natural progression for an inexperienced horse, and I'm not sure our system is doing itself that many favours with those type of horse to try and keep them on these shores.
Yeah, because we need horses to be able to progress through the system, and whatever your training methods are at home, inevitably it's going to involve developing a horse slowly to get to their full potential. But if you're forced into a position where you have to get a horse to win early on, or, for example, if you train a horse to win a maiden race that you think at the end of the season, this could be a horse running in the Dewhurst, this could be a futurity horse, this might be a horse that takes us to the Breeders' Cup, but your owners are getting an offer for 6 figures there and then, and all you can offer them is the potential of what this horse can do, but they now have a very, very firm offer for that horse to go to Hong Kong or Australia. That puts them in a really difficult position because you can take big money now or go with the potential of what might be.
Yeah, it's look, I think it depends on the owner, doesn't it? At the end of the day, that's their call, and I'd be a sell rather than, you know, I'd rather the owner took the money and reinvested and we went again.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that that's the way it's gone, but there's not really much of a choice. I mean, you can't look at an owner in good conscience and say, "No, stick with me, we'll win the Dewhurst," because only one horse can do that. And
yeah, it's hard, but it's, you know, for me that is where we are, and I'd love to think that every horse could go and win a Group 1, but I try and be a little bit more realistic than that.
Yeah, the most valuable commodity in racing is potential, but not all horses can fulfill that potential. Has the international racing scene become more attractive to you? Like running horses in America, Hong Kong, Australia, has that become more interesting to you because of the prize money and the massive offers that there can be out there?
Yeah, I think it's the prize money is a massive thing, but also, you know, it's an enjoyable experience for owners travelling horses. You know, we've had a number of winners in France have been very good to us for the past few years, and Via Sistina winning the Pretty Polly in Ireland, and Hong Kong was our first venture this winter, and we'll continue to travel horses. Whenever there is a horse that I think can travel, they will be on a boat, plane, or a train.
Do you see it switching back, that the international runners will start coming back to the UK? Essentially, do you see anything to give you confidence in British racing's leadership that the ship is about to be steered away from the rocks and into safer, calmer waters?
No.
Neither do I, by the way.
Ascot was a prime example of where we're going this year with so few foreign raiders. You know, the Hong Kong, when we were out there, their sprinters aren't going to come to Ascot because, you know, it disrupts their program and they can race for more prize money on their doorstep. It's, you know, I think the lure of, you know, it is the greatest thrill in racing, having a winner at Royal Ascot, and we were very lucky to have one this year. But, you know, money talks at the end of the day, and there were very few Americans, no one from Asia. Obviously, the Australians had a winner and they had another runner in the Sandringham, but that was trained in England. And yeah, it's a slightly worrying time, and I hope that we can find a solution for it.
Yeah, I hope so too. I've been saying this for years. It felt at times like I was wearing an Alex Jones-style tinfoil hat engaging in conspiracy theories because nobody was listening. And now suddenly they are. And it's like, oh, well, you've copped on now that there's a problem? Oh, that's great. Well, we'll see if things can change. Speaking of your Royal Ascot winner, Soprano, winning handicap debut, up and trip, I should have backed her. It was pretty obvious. I did not, I'm afraid, as part of the analysis on the day. But she was terrific. It was a really good renewal of the Sandringham Stakes too. She needed to be good, and she was the best horse in the race. We're going to see her this weekend in the Coral Distaff, the listed race. How has she come out of Royal Ascot?
Yeah, look, it was a plan that Harry and I sort of hatched after Musselburgh. Actually, I was in the car on the way back from watching Sheik Columbine run very well at Epsom, and we'd always wanted to explore the trip with her, and she's come out of the race super. She needs a strong pace, and every inch of the mile really. It was a very satisfying day. It was only a handicap. She is a stakes horse. She's a multiple group placed horse, and one who I hope we can make a winner at sort of pattern level at some point. And unfortunately, she's drawn quite a wide gate on Saturday, but over to Billy to work his magic.
Speaking of that magic, there's another fellow we've been talking about for quite a while on this show. He is absolutely mustard. That was his second Royal Ascot winner as well. But to see him thriving as well as he is, obviously a wise head on very young shoulders, but he does seem to be an exceptional talent.
Yeah, I think ever since, I've mentioned it many a time, ever since he stepped foot in the yard, he was someone who we wanted to have on side. He was just a young kid at the time, and he's matured amazingly over the past sort of 16 months really since he got going, and he's going to get a good chance with us, and I think he'll have he's got a big career ahead of him, and to get the first listed winner and group winner and Royal Ascot winner, bang bang bang, and but Billy's a good kid, and great to have him on the team.
Yeah, it's so often you see the young apprentices who are absolute stars just fall away once they lose the claim. Not a bit of it with this fella though, and he seems to have a really good mentality as well, and surrounded by good people. I'm very optimistic for him.
I think that's a big part of it. You need the support when you lose your claim. It's kind of like training a few winners in your first year. You need the support going forward, otherwise you get forgotten about. And he's ridden a big number of winners already this year, and I think the thing that sets you apart is riding those winners on the big day, and hopefully that can continue for him.
Royal Ascot Place in the King George V Stakes with 410 Fever. I'm sure I've butchered that name, but he ran a blinder. We're going to see him on Saturday as well with Callum Shepherd on board. How has he come out of Ascot?
Yeah, he's come out in super shape. He's drawn a bit wider today. He's drawn on Saturday 14 of 14, but I'm led to believe that a higher draw is probably more beneficial for a horse who might lack a little turn of foot stepping up to mile 6 for the first time. For Callum, we had to pick his spot, and he's come out of the race super. He galloped all the way around to Swinley Bottom at Ascot, and looked like the mile 6 he was sort of crying out for already, and delighted with his condition. He's training great, and he'll handle a bit of ease in the ground, and I think he goes there with a very live each way chance.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I think he's got a major chance, actually. Two more horses to ask you about. One is Pentle Bay, who you mentioned earlier on, ran clearly displayed a lot of promise on debut with his win at Leicester, and then has been bought for a small fortune at the sale just before Royal Ascot. And he's run a very big race. He's not in the same league as the winner. Few horses are, I suspect. That was Frankel-esque from Bedtime Story, but how has Pentle Bay come out of Royal Ascot?
Yeah, he's in good shape. Straightforward horse who, he's still very raw and green and learning on the job. And Tom Marquand gave him a lovely ride that day, and he sort of came out of the pack to finish best of the rest. And no real plans with him at the moment. He's going to probably step up in grade, and ran a listed race at Royal Ascot, and he's been bought by Team Valley and Kieran Maher, and he'll end up in Australia at some point unless he sort of gets right to the top of the pecking order in this country. But I'm pleased with him. He's come out of the race good, and July meeting Goodwood. He could go to France. He had an entry at Deauville yesterday, so the options are very open for him, and he's just a nice horse to have around.
And just looking at him on the Sky cameras, I wasn't at the Royal meeting, but I was covering it for TalkSport. He does look like he has quite a big frame.
Yeah, he's raw. He's by New Bay and out of a Galileo mare, sort of. It all lends itself to his career when he leaves me, probably. He's a nice horse, and one who's only going to improve as he gets over more ground into his 3-year-old career.
Yeah, you could see him being a Melbourne Cup type for sure. Believing, she's become an absolute star. A great win at the beginning of the season in the UK, and then 2 fourth-place finishes in Group 1s at Royal Ascot, the King Charles III Stakes, backed up with the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee. Going forward, is 5 furlongs going to suit her a little bit better than 6?
I think it comes sort of 6 of one, half a dozen the other to her. You know, she's a pretty adaptable filly, and looks like we could be going to Ireland for the Group 2. She had a break and she came back in yesterday and was in good shape. And I'm not in any rush with her. She's got a few assignments left this year. You know, I'd love to. She could run at Goodwood. The Breeders' Cup at the end of the year is a big target for her, but the Flying 5 at the Curragh really looks like the standout option for her at the moment.
Yeah, and we are sorely lacking sprinters in Ireland, so I suspect that race is ripe for export, and it may very well be going to Believing. Best of luck with her. Hopefully we'll talk to you before Irish Champions Weekend. She began her season down the field in the Group 1 Chairman's Prize in Hong Kong, and you mentioned that at the start. And as I was saying, about asking trainers about how difficult it is to be a trainer in the UK at the moment, that's a question I've asked pretty much every single trainer I've spoken to for the last few years. But one of the things that gets brought up a few times is Frankie Dettori's comments as he left the UK for his new career in America, saying that if he was starting now, it wouldn't be the UK, he'd start in Australia or America, because prestige is great and all that, but prize money is what really matters. And looking at the prize money in Hong Kong, Andre Atsini's won £8 million in prize money this season, 4th in the Jockeys Championship. Harry Bentley, £3 million, 9th in the Jockeys Championship, 37 winners. Sylvester de Souza didn't quite work out for him in the end, but he won as much money in 7 weeks riding in Hong Kong as he did in 7 months. If you were starting out all over again, knowing what you know now, would you begin your training career in Britain, or would you look to start it somewhere like Australia, America, Hong Kong, Dubai?
Look, England has been very good to me so far, and I think it's enabled me to get my foot in the door and train the winners that we have. And you know, from small beginnings, I've been very well supported and hugely grateful for that. So to have done what we've done so far has been incredibly satisfying, and that we will continue to try and spread our wings further afield. But at the moment, the UK is the base for me.
At the moment,
yeah, look, it's where we're training our winners from, and it's going pretty good. It's
going excellent. Is there one horse I haven't mentioned that we should be keeping a very close eye out for in the coming weeks?
The filly who impressed me winning under a penalty, Bountiful up at Carlisle. She missed Royal Ascot. You know, Highclere were very supportive of my view that she wasn't mentally ready for the big occasion, and I was pleased with her. William Buick went all the way up to Carlisle to ride her, and luckily we were proven right that she was a good filly, and she beat the Colts by 4.5 lengths, I think. And she's a filly who could go to the July meeting next week, or something like a Rose Bowl, or the race at Ascot. I can't remember what it's called, the 6 furlong fillies Group 3. She's one who I think has got a big season ahead of her.
Bountiful is going straight into the tracker. George, thank you so much for your time. It's much appreciated. Please God, we'll talk to you again during the summer, but the very best of luck in the coming weeks.
Top man. Thanks, mate.
Top trainers Charlie Fellows and George Boughey joining us on the Final Furlong podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with them as much as I did. If you did, likes and shares on social media are greatly appreciated. It really helps with the algorithm, and we are back with more content on the Final Furlong podcast very soon. Thank you very much for listening. Look after yourself and each other. God bless. The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Join the excitement and sign up to Jeff Banks online now to get 10% off any net losses returned as cash after your first month of betting, up to £500 at jeffbanks.bet.